Welcome to the Cabral Concept, where board-certified naturopath and integrative health practitioner Dr. Stephen Cabral shares how he was diagnosed at the age of 17 with a life-altering illness and given no hope for recovery. It was only after studying and traveling all over the world did he discover how to combine ancient Ayurvedic healing practices with state-of-the-art naturopathic and functional medicine to fully rebalance the body and re-energize it with life. It's time to discover how to get well, lose weight, and finally feel alive again. And now, here's your host, Dr. Stephen Cabral.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the show. Great to have you with me here today on this Training Thursday edition of the Cabral Concept, where we are going to break down this all-important theory of hormesis, or hormetic response. This is one of the most crucial things that you can begin to comprehend, absorb, and put to use in your life. And I really believe that. We're talking about it on a Training Thursday because you can use it with exercise, but it also has to do with fasting. You'll know if you're doing too much or too little. It has to do with sauna. It has to do with too much sleep, with exercise, with all of these different items that we know to be healthy innately. The problem is sometimes we do too little and sometimes we do too much. And oftentimes we don't know how to decide what is too much or too little, whether for ourselves or for our health coaching clients or for your personal training clients, etc. So I want to go through that today because not only do I think it will help you become so much more healthy, but here's the other thing. It's going to help with anti-aging. There's so many people out there right now who believe they're supposed to be doing things one way. They're supposed to fast for 16 hours a day. They're supposed to do cold baths, or they're supposed to do saunas for a very long period of time, or they're supposed to do brutally hard workouts, or they're supposed to do this, that, and the other thing, right? That we're told that these things are all great. Well, the problem is they are all great. They're all fantastic. The issue is, are they fantastic for us? That's always what we have to be asking. We know the data backs up this, and the other thing, right? But the problem is, and you hear this from all sorts of different experts, they never tell you how much and for how long. Fasting is amazing. How much, though? How much fasting should you do, and how long? Should you eat no food? Should you eat a little bit of food? Should you just reduce your calories for the day? Well, let's go through that right now. So think of this. Think of a hormetic response. And that's hormetic, okay? hormetic, if you want to begin to look up and learn a little bit more about this. One of my favorite fields of study, and has been for quite some time. And the reason why it has been is that I realize that different body types have much greater buffering-based systems, of course, depending relative to where they are right there in their life. Meaning all things being equal, if you have two different body types, the ectomorph body type will say, and the endomorph body type is going to be able to endure typically more physical manual-based labor than the ectomorph. We'll go through why, okay? We'll go through all the reasons why in just a moment. Here's the thing. Hormesis or hormetic response is simply our response to stress. But you might say to yourself, well, everybody has a different response to stress, and that's exactly correct. That is exactly what we're talking about. It's this hormetic stimulus to our biology, to our body. So for a lot of people, when let's say they hop into a cold bath, okay, or a cold shower, their body gets highly stimulated. But their body was already producing plenty of dopamine, plenty of norepinephrine, plenty of cortisol. And so for them, it is an exacerbation of that stimulus, which means that it is now too high, too much. They're already higher vata. They're already higher anxiety. They are already stimulated in terms of the nervous system. So what does it do, though? And I'm going to go through every example today. If you're exposed to a stimulus or stress that is simply too great for your body, well, it's actually very specific. And this is, again, all science-based. When we are exposed to stress, it can be extremely beneficial for the body. And so I want to teach you how to expose yourself to varying degrees of stress, and I'll teach you how in just a moment, while obviously improving your ability to adapt to stress. But the problem is this. When we're exposed to too much stress, it begins to break down our body. So it does a few things. It lowers the level of something called brain-derived neurotropic growth factor. We'll talk about that. The stimulus of new brain cells, of neuroplasticity, of cognitive function. We want that as we're aging, right? It also could stimulate higher levels of insulin through higher levels of stress. And I talked about that in a podcast before. Higher levels of cortisol are typically going to elevate levels of blood sugar, which will typically elevate levels of insulin, which will then typically elevate levels of inflammation, which then elevate levels of cortisol even more. You can see how it's a vicious cycle, right? And I just did a video webinar teaching all of that specifically for the Bioregulatory Medicine Institute. And I put that obviously on my website as well. Go back, check it out on previous podcasts too. Okay. So we know that it can lower levels of brain-derived neurotropic growth factor, just called BDNF. You'll probably hear it, I'm sure, if you're into this health-based field. It will elevate levels of insulin, which is not going to help in terms of blood sugar and type 2 diabetes and your cell's response to glucose, and also the body's ability to balance testosterone and balance DHEA and balance estrogen. So really important as well. And then there'll be lower levels of our own natural growth factor, right? Our IGF-1, our own growth hormone production. We don't want that. And then if there are too much stress, we're actually going to increase something called free radical damage or reactive oxygen species, okay? And that's typically called ROS. So think of it this way. I'm going to use an example of being out in the sun. Getting a little bit of sun is highly beneficial. Highly beneficial. You're going to raise your vitamin D levels naturally. Your body's going to start to produce more sulfur. It helps with a detoxification-based process. It helps metabolize hormones. So very beneficial. It's good for the eyes. It's good for everything in the body. Good for regulating that diurnal rhythm. So one person's in the sun for 60 minutes. They're out in their bathing suit. They're getting sun. They're enjoying themselves. Another person's out in the sun for the same exact 60 minutes. One person, they have more melanin in their skin. They don't get any sunburn at all. They're in the sun, they're enjoying themselves, and they're getting a slight tan. The other person's in the sun for 1 hour. They get red. They get a sunburn. They start to blister. This is the definition of hormesis or hormetic-based stimuli. The sun is the stimulus. Their biological response is different. One person is naturally meant to be in that sun for an hour or more. That's how they know. That's their ability to get more vitamin D. They have darker skin. That skin needs, or that body needs, more vitamin D. The person with the lighter skin that got the sunburn needs less sun. It is apparent by the sunburn, the red skin that the person got after being in the sun for too long. The response to the sun was shown as a sunburn. When the sunburn came out, or even before that, there would have been signs. A little bit of inflammation, maybe a little bit of increased heart rate, some flushing of the cheeks, some redness of the ears, a little bit of lightheadedness or weakness. It would have started to show if we were in tune with our body. Now, that person that got that sun for 60 minutes and got the sunburn, they now have the free radical damage, the inflammation, potentially higher levels of insulin or blood sugar, possible, and the lower levels of that brain-derived neurotropic growth factor, right? Lower levels of growth hormone. Their body's in more of a survival-based state now. The other person, they're near the water, they're out in the sun, same 60 minutes, let's say the same beach, they're loving life. Growth hormones increasing, BDNFs are increasing, their insulin levels are low, their free radical damage is low. They are getting the right amount of sun for them. So remember, the sun didn't change. The sun didn't change. The two different people are just different, which goes to show that you can't give the same recommendation for every single person when it comes to lifestyle-based habits. You can give the same recommendation in terms of a nutritional supplement or other things. Yes, that works for a protocol, but not always in terms of sleep and fasting and sun. I want to go through a few more examples. So when your dermatologist or someone says, oh, you should only be in the sun for 15 minutes and then you should cover up. Anyone who tells you that, it's just nonsense. It really is. And it's harmful because it leads you to believe that there's some all for one. And like the 16th minute that all of a sudden you'll start to get, the sun damage. No, that's not what's going to happen. Some people need hours in the sun. The darker your skin naturally, the more you need in the sun to naturally raise your vitamin D levels, amongst other things. The lighter your skin, the more prone you are to sunburning, the less time you want in the sun. Everyone should get some sun, but not to the point of burning. So that's how we look at it. Now same thing with fasting, okay? When we fast, it has been shown the endomorphic body type, more prone to diabetes and high blood pressure, as well as even cardiovascular-based risk, okay, does better, typically, on average, again, we're just using generalizations, with longer periods of fasting. Typically, their blood sugar elevates easier and doesn't come down as easy as the ectomorph or vata-based body type. If you drop into hypoglycemia, low blood sugar, you start to get hangry. It's a good sign that you are dropping into that low blood sugar, okay? And that you have fasted potentially for too long. But again, how can we also look at fasting? Well, the leaner you are, the thinner you are, the more catabolic you are, the more brain fog, the more fatigue, the more worn out, the nervous system depleted, the less you want to fast. I believe everyone should fast. The degree and length of fasting will be based on the strength and constitution of the individual. If an individual feels wiped out after 13, 14 hours of fasting, they should cut that back to 12 hours, or maybe it's simply making sure they eat within 30 to 60 minutes upon waking. They might need something based on that extremely low blood sugar and already catabolic-based state. So we're saying fasting is good. Everybody believes that. There's always a percentage of people who can't fast, but only because medically they're not well yet. They need to do things in order to balance the body. Of course, that makes sense. Exercise is a big one. You should only exercise based on your current level of strength of constitution. So I talk about this in the Integrative Health Practitioner course and certification. If your body is run down, if you are exhausted, if you exercise on top of that, do you think you'll have more energy? If you answered, well, only after the workout, you would be correct. And then you'll be even more depleted. So you can run off stress hormone. If you're exhausted and you push yourself to work out, you'll get an adrenaline-based stimulus. And you will wake up only to further deplete your body. And you will absolutely be creating more free radical damage, more reactive oxygen species, really dysregulated blood sugar, lower levels of growth hormone, and overall aging at a much faster rate. I just did an interview. I'm not going to name the person, but I just did an interview. And some people are just so dogmatic. And I'm not here to judge. And that's why I would never name their name. I would never say it to them. But I bring things up in conversation. I just say something to think about. Something to think about. I typically just say it like that. And the reason is this. Just because you heard someone say ice baths, long saunas, fasting for the majority of the day, I mean, that's not right for everyone. This person was getting 5 to 6 hours of sleep, waking up, doing a workout, doing sauna, doing ice baths. Listen, they were stimulating their body all day long. Ice baths, workouts upon waking, fasting, fasted workouts, and then only sleeping 5 to 6 hours while traveling like basically all over the world. And you're telling me, just think about it like this. You're telling me that person's not going to age at a rapid rate? Of course they are. Our bodies are living organisms. We have to start to look at them this way. Your body is a living, breathing thing. Take your mind out of the equation. The mind is not necessarily part of the body. Your brain is. The brain's an organ in the body, okay? We can look at that. But the mind, not really. I'm not even really convinced how it necessarily integrates with everything. I know the circuitry. I know the brain. I know the brain stem. I know the nerves innervating the autonomic nervous system and nervous system off of the spine. I understand that. I get that. But what I'm saying is our mind can push our body to do whatever we want. But the organism responds to the hormetic stress in its own way, not necessarily just how the mind wants it to. So if you're not sleeping and then you're stimulating the body all day, you're in more of a catabolic-based state. That means you will break down and create entropy. That means you will break down faster than you will rebuild. Every medical system in the world knows this except conventional medicine. Conventional medicine came up with this theory of hormesis. It knows it, and it was really mastered in 1988. But here's the thing. They don't even know what to do with it. Because if they had simply read about traditional Chinese medicine, the great Taoist medicine, Ayurvedic medicine, bioregulatory medicine, you would simply see that there's a yin and yang to everything. Okay? What does it mean? It means the yin is, let's look at it as the rebuilding, the anabolic, and the yang is the catabolic, the go, go, go. Think of the yang as the fight or flight, and the yin as the rest, relax, rejuvenate. If you are always stimulating the body and putting it in survival-based mode with higher levels of fasting, higher levels of workouts, really long sauna sessions, cold baths, just anything that you could think about stimulating and not enough sleep, that's yang. And that yang will burn out the yin. And the yin is your life force, which is allowing you to rejuvenate on a daily basis. That's why we have to be careful. When we're younger, we can get away with a lot more. As we begin to age, we need to be very careful about wearing out this body and creating entropy. Do I still work out? Yes. Do I still fast? Yes. Do I still use saunas? Yes. Do I still use all sorts of different recovery methods? Absolutely. Do I try to get my 8 hours of sleep a night? Absolutely. Am I perfect? Not by a long shot. But I'm listening more to my body. And even beyond that, I'm not listening to my body. I'm also listening to sound science from the past 6,000 years. So I know if I flew, let's say, to LA, I did a bunch of interviews, got less sleep, was out to dinners with people, I was exercising, doing workouts with people, doing interviews all day, really just enjoying myself, having a lot of fun. I come back to Boston, I didn't get in till, let's say, 12, midnight, 1 a.m., wake up the next morning at 6:30 a.m. with my daughters, it's the weekend, and we're having fun all day. I'm really pushing it. Now, I still might feel great, and that is why I can't always listen to my body. I have to do the right thing and understand I just pushed myself for 5 days. I need to get a little bit more sleep now tonight. Go to bed earlier. Eat clean. Not do those hard workouts the day I just got back and got 5.5 hours sleep. So you have to listen a little bit to your body, but also understanding if you've been go, pushing, there then has to be some downtime. If not, believe me, your body will make you do it after a while. You will break down. You'll feel the brain fog. You'll feel the fatigue. You'll feel the inflammation that comes out as headaches or joint pain or fibromyalgia, etc. You'll feel it. You'll feel maybe the bloating, the weak digestion, and you might push back more. You might say, well, I just need my pre-workout. I just need my caffeine. I just need to push through the day. And when you do that, when you are pushing against the body, I can tell you that is very quickly going to lead to you breaking it. And the breaking is what we call dis-ease, right? Disease of the body. Well, what is it? Well, name it. You choose the disease name of your liking, right? Rheumatoid arthritis, we have dementia, we have MS, we have Crohn's and colitis, and we have many different inflammatory stress-based conditions. And they have to do with various forms of life. You will say, well, that has to do with my gut. What does that have to do with stress? Well, only everything. Only everything. Because stress alone can cause leaky gut, can cause intestinal permeability. Forget about the antibiotics, the Advil, the chlorinated water, the birth control, the processed food. Forget about all that. Stress alone can cause intestinal permeability. So when you look at that, they're intimately connected. So couple more I want you to look at. I talked about the sauna. I love saunas. One of my favorite things. I basically have a sauna at work. I have one in Boston. When I go to Maine, I'm getting a sauna for up there. So you have to understand is I believe in all of these things. I do all of them. But what you don't do is get into a sauna and try to be a hero and just say, wow, I'm really getting wiped out. 20 more minutes. There's nothing to prove. You don't get a medal for pushing your body to exhaustion. What you get is maybe a little bit of ego boost, but then you are going to be wearing out the body and you'll get a deflated ego over time because you won't be able to hold up. You won't. So it's not everything in moderation, but it's everything in balance. So now I want to turn this a little bit on its head. So we talked about some of the major ones, okay? Some of the major ones are too much stress, not enough sleep for too many days in a row, too much sun or too little sun, too much fasting, too little fasting, exercise, all of those things, right? All can be very, very positive. Now, here is the brilliant part that's built into our body. And again, I talked about this in Integrative Health Practitioner. I talked about this in my book, The Rain Barrel Effect. Okay. And I talk about this in the podcast, the 4 phases of exercise. If you are wiped out, you need to gradually build back up. So think about this. This is with everything. If you have myalgic encephalomyelitis, CFS, chronic fatigue syndrome, Addison's disease, name fibromyalgia, name any chronic inflammatory fatigue-based issue, right? HPA dysfunction, HPA maladaptation, whatever you want to call it, okay? We have a lot of fancy names in the American medical system, which obviously spans all over the world. But here's the thing. You can repair and rebuild your body. You just can't do it all at once. And that's what I try to tell people. I relapsed so many times because as I was starting to feel great and have more energy, I would go to the gym and use it all up. Or I would go out one weekend and I would stay out late both nights and get a lack of sleep, and then I'd get sick on Sunday or Monday. I'd get swollen glands, I'd get inflamed, I'd get worn down, I'd have brain fog, I'd be irritable, I'd be miserable to be around, right? You didn't want to hang around with me during those times. So here's the thing. What I lacked was understanding. I lacked a little bit of maturity when it comes to overall health. And maturity, I don't mean like growing up. Maturity is in getting it, understanding the process, truly realizing that this body, it's an organism. It's a living thing. We need to allow it to repair and rebuild on its own time. And that's going to take cycles of 90 to 120 days. So I didn't realize, now we help so many people with all of these debilitating diseases of the body. And the way that we help them is we just say, depending on the case, you might not feel better in 3 weeks to 4 weeks like a lot of people do. It's not for us to judge or say when you will get better. There's no timetable. What we're going to do is help you to improve as fast as your body allows. And that's as fast as we can go. So people say, well, how quickly can I get back to exercising? Well, let's have you move through all the different levels first. Let's start you walking. Can you walk 10,000 steps per day? If you're currently at around 3,000 to 3,500, which most people are, and it's very easy to track with one of the fancy rings or bracelets or your phone, whatever you want to use. You can go old school and clip a pedometer onto your pants if you'd like. All of them work. Test it out. Don't jump from 3,500 steps a day, though, to 10,000. Work up 1,000 or so steps per week so you don't exhaust yourself. And then you can move on to the next level, which we consider cardiovascular work. A lot of people jump right to heavy weight training, but you have to understand, weight training, phenomenal. Love it. Built my career from there, okay? Always have always be a part of me. That's what I love doing to this day. Right after I record this podcast, I'm going to the gym. I love going to the gym still. I have my own studio. I can work out my own studio. I have weights at my house. I love going to the gym. I still love it. So here's the thing, though. You have to work your way up. Working out with weights stimulates the nervous system to a much higher degree. You have to build up to that because the more nervous system stimulation you do, the greater the hormetic stimuli. And what happens if you exercise too much? You actually dysregulate blood sugar levels. That's why I talk about that all the time in the show. You can actually test for that. You actually create more free radical damage, more inflammation. You increase insulin desensitivity. You desensitize insulin. You actually lower growth hormone levels. People talk about, I increase IGF-1 by exercise. You might or you might not. If you exercise to the degree that your body can handle, fantastic. Then you did. If you go past that and you're exhausted the next day, you didn't. How do you know? Well, you keep track of it just like anything else. In a sauna, if you can do 20 minutes, you might do 22 minutes the next week. If you're exercising and you're good at 2 sets, you're not inflamed the next day, you're not worn out, you might try 3 sets the next week. Okay? Same weights, try 3 sets the next week. What you do is you gradually experience the stressor, allow your body to see its comfort level. If it's too much, you back off. You master that level. If 20 minutes in the sauna is too much, because you're wiped out the next day, next time you do 10 minutes. 10 minutes might feel like nothing. I say, good. Then next time you go in, you can try 12, and then 14, and then 16, or 12, and then 15, right? And you test it. And you also make sure you understand where you're at in life right now. If you didn't sleep for a week, and you can typically do 3 sets of exercise of those sets, you might only want to do 2. Why? Because it's the whole rain barrel effect. It is all about the rain barrel effect. If you are stressed in other areas of your life, don't pile on with your exercise or your sauna. Still do your exercise, but maybe not go for personal best. Maybe not set out to hit world records that day. Your sauna, maybe do the sauna, but even if you could do 30 minutes, maybe you only do 20. Because what you're doing is you're not adding on. You're not filling up that rain barrel to an even greater degree. I'll tell you right now, this is the way that you handle more stress as well. Because if you gradually adapt to the stress of your life right now, and you're still eating well, you're getting your sleep, you're getting your nutritional supplements, your whole foods, all of those things, then you can gradually increase the stress in the body. And if it does not wear you out and break you down, and again, you have to listen, right? You have to listen to the body, then you are gradually improving your body's ability to respond to stress. That is the way that you adapt to stressors in life. That's the way that your body gets stronger. That is the way that you increase those levels of natural growth hormone. That's how you increase neuroplasticity in the brain and actually improve that brain-derived neurotropic growth factor. That's how you better regulate blood sugar and insulin, lower inflammatory levels, and decrease free radical damage. That is the way that you do it. There is no all-for-one approach. If everyone tells you keto is right, or fasting 16 hours is correct, or going into a sauna until basically you pass out, or exercising extremely hard, or exercising first thing in the morning, or only sleeping 5 hours a night because you can get away with it. None of that means it's correct. It just means that your body can do it. What I want you to do is listen more to your body. Think about the balance in the Great Tao. Think about the balance between the yin and the yang. The more that you achieve that, the more that your body will continue to last year in and year out. Hopefully today's podcast was helpful. If it was, please, as always, do feel free to share this information with anyone you believe it could serve. I want to sincerely thank you for your support of this podcast. I couldn't do it without you, and I mean that. I truly do. I also want to make sure you knew that we now have multiple ways for you to find your answers to the most difficult health, wellness, weight loss, and anti-aging questions. You can find podcast-specific topics like thyroid, adrenal, hormones, sleep, digestion, Ayurveda, and many more at stevencabral.com/podcasts that will then link you to your favorite Apple, Spotify, and other podcast players. Plus, all new podcasts and weekly exclusive video content is being added to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/Stephen Cabral. And that's Stephen with a PH. Head on over and subscribe so that you don't miss any of the exclusive content. Lastly, if you've ever found any of my podcasts or books to be helpful, I would really appreciate it if you could leave a review on iTunes or your favorite media player for the podcast. Rating and subscribing to the YouTube and podcast allow me to reach more and more people and help spread my mission of healing throughout the world. Thank you again for being a part of this movement.